welcome to Casually Criterion, a casual cinemedia podcast. My name is Chris.
My name's Mike.
And my name's Justin. Casually Criterion is the podcast where we watch through the Criterion Collection in spine order.
And today we will actually be going over what's on our minds in regards to film news and current events. Then we will be moving into our review of Jonathan Demme's The Silence of the Lambs, spine number 13 of the Criterion Collection. And actually, we are doing an Oscars bet this year before the Academy Awards. So on email, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, our Facebook group, whatever you want to use, go through, pick all of your favorite Oscar contenders, what you think's going to win in each category, send it in to us. We will be doing the same thing. And whoever actually gets the most points right by the end, basically whoever predicts the Oscars best this year, gets to choose one movie for us to review on the Casually Current or Casually Criterion episodes. So we will all be uploading our picks to Facebook within the next few days. We all encourage you guys to do the same, and if you win, we will contact you, and you can let us know what you want us to review.
Beautiful. I'm excited.
Yeah.
So hopefully you send us all in your picks, and...
Yeah, and if you want to know where to send those, you can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/casualcinemedia. You can join our group and talk to us about the Oscars, films, TV shows, what you had for dinner, if you want, I guess. And that's at facebook.com/group/casualcinemedia. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at casualcinemedia. Or if you want to email us directly, you can do so at our email, which we haven't changed because it seems easier to keep it the same, casuallycriterion@gmail.com.
But don't actually send us what you had for dinner.
I don't know. If it was something special, you can send it.
Yeah, if it's really, really cool. I would care if someone had like a $200 steak. I would want to hear about that.
Or something along the lines of what we're about to talk about. If you had that for dinner, that might be...
Yeah, that may be incriminating, though.
And I especially don't want that.
Yeah, cool. So first up on the movie news, what's on our mind is Chris. What do you got?
So I've been trying to catch up from the play I was in. I've been out for a while, so I didn't get to watch a lot of movies. And I watched 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which I think is a pretty cool title.
It is a very cool title.
But while I was out, I was doing a lot of driving. I got to listen to you guys do the podcast on it. And I actually enjoyed this, I think, quite a bit more than you guys.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, maybe it was...
I didn't.
Yeah, Justin. And I actually enjoyed Woody Harrelson quite a bit. And it may be one of those things where, you listen to somebody not like it, and then you go watch it, and you expect to not like it at all, and then...
We adequately lowered that bar for
you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. I thought it was really good. I thought it was about angry people doing angry things, and it was not an easy watch, but I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yeah, anger begetting anger is basically the whole thing of that
She
movie.
read it in the polio book.
Just a sidetrack here, Chris. Isn't Frances McDormand so good in that movie?
She is amazing. Both her and Sam Rockwell are really good, and Woody Harrelson is... I liked him quite a bit. I thought he was really good in it. But yeah, Frances McDormand knocks it out of the park. Did you guys talk at all? I don't think you did, but the controversy about Sam Rockwell's redemption, was he redeemed at the end? I guess
we touched on it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
We both felt that it was we touched on the racism element of him, and both felt like that wasn't adequately touched on enough for him to be redeemed by the end of it.
Yeah, it felt like they dropped that whole thing.
Yeah, but to me, I don't think he was redeemed. He did a nice thing because people are bigger than just one thing, right? But he did a nice thing, but he was still a scumbag. And I think Frances McDormand's character was pretty close to being was not far different from being a scumbag as well, because she was holding on to this. She was holding on to this anger. She was not that far from Sam Rockwell, so I don't see it as him being redeemed. I just see it as them both going off and doing this bad thing at the end because they're both holding on to this anger.
Yeah, I don't think the movie intends for anybody to end up...
I don't think it tries to be that clean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways.
I think, real quick before we move on from 3 Billboards, I think, and I mentioned this in the review, but I still feel it now. I think Martin McDonagh, who wrote and directed this movie, I don't think he was trying to set up a clean redemption so much as I think he would have felt it dishonest to write a movie in the American South without touching on the elements that an outside party would perceive of the American South, like racist cops and things of that nature. So that's kind of how I feel about it. But if you want to know more about our thoughts on that, go listen to our episode on 3 Billboards and A Ghost Story.
Absolutely. But I enjoyed you guys' review, and then I enjoyed the movie, so good job, guys.
Just out of the Best Picture ones you've seen, where does it rank, just generally?
I think it's above... so Dunkirk is my favorite out of the ones I've seen. Darkest Hour, it's above Darkest Hour. I like Darkest Hour, but I think this is better. It has more to say, whether it's good or bad, however you feel about it. What was... No, I don't...
Yeah, you don't have to go through each one of them.
Yeah.
I just want to...
So I would say it's right there in the middle of the pack so far. Dunkirk is really good.
Okay.
But, yeah. All right.
Cool. All right, Mike, you're next.
All right, so recently I have actually been watching some TV shows. I've watched the first episode of a Netflix original called Altered Carbon. Have you guys heard of this?
I have heard of it.
I've heard of it, but I have no idea what it's about. I've only seen the name around.
Yeah, it's kind of trying to give the vibe of a Blade Runner type thing. It is about a future where if you die, if you have enough money, you can transfer your consciousness into another sleeve, quote unquote, which is just like a body without a consciousness in it. So I haven't seen much more than the first episode, actually no more than the first episode, but in it you see like an Asian hitman or criminal type guy actually die, and when he gets brought back, he's brought back into a white man, and it's, oh man, what's this guy's name? The same guy who played in the remake of RoboCop. Bear with me one moment. You can.
It's the same guy. He was in Rome.
His name is Joel Kinnaman.
I always think he's Thomas Jane.
Yeah, I can see that. But yeah, anyway. So the first episode, I don't really know how I feel about it yet, but I'm definitely intrigued and will be watching at least 2 or 3 more episodes to see if it floats my boat.
Yeah, it's definitely one that I've seen and I'm interested in. I just haven't had the opportunity to watch it.
It's very impressive visually. It looks like Netflix spent a lot of money to make this thing look good. Yeah, and then, so that's Altered Carbon. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was a show that's coming on Starz, starring J.K. Simmons. It's a science fiction thriller or drama, whatever. And it's called Counterpart. Have either of you guys seen any of this show?
I have seen the first episode, which I actually watched earlier today.
And I've seen the first 2 episodes.
Nice. I've seen the first 3 episodes so far.
Yeah. So be careful what you talk about.
Yeah, I won't talk about anything specific, but I really enjoyed the first episode quite a bit. I thought it was a very strong start to a interesting science fiction premise. And I think J.K. Simmons is phenomenal in this show so far, which is nothing new for J.K. Simmons. But he's actually playing 2 very distinct characters in this one with distinct personalities. And I always enjoy whenever I get to see actors really get to play and show off their craft. And I feel like this show was designed for J.K. Simmons to show off his craft.
Yeah, more or less.
J.K. Simmons for me is the highlight of it. And if I keep watching, it'll be because of J.K. Simmons. I mean, not that I don't like the show, but watching J.K. Simmons play those 2 roles. How many times do you think I can say J.K. Simmons?
I think you can say it as many times as you want because I believe in you.
All right. But I really enjoy watching him do his thing. What did you think, Justin?
Yeah, I thought it was very good. I guess I would consider it kind of a sci-fi movie. There's a lot of...
Certainly. Yeah.
It could be like a CIA, like lots of stuff like is under wraps and not everyone knows what's going on. There's like secrets, almost like sort of government secret stuff going on. I thought it was really well acted, really interesting. I'm definitely watching the second episode. I think that one thing is visually it felt a little bit reminiscent of like what David Fincher has been doing the last like 10 years. I kind of would like to see something a little bit different visually, but that's kind of pretty nitpicky. At this point, I don't really care about the visuals of the show because that's not what's drawing you in. It's,
right.
I guess I haven't seen Altered Carbon, but unlike Altered Carbon, which sounds like it has a heavy visual aspect to it, this really doesn't.
Sure.
So it doesn't really matter. But I really enjoyed it, and I did want to say that the game that they're playing in the park.
I thought about you
and it's like a heavy part of like the opening credits sequence is Go, which if you remember on our Best of 2017, one of my top 5 movies was a documentary about the game Go. But that's the game that they're playing, so I'm so glad that I saw the documentary because I knew what they were doing and I got what was going on.
Was there a hidden meaning in the game?
Oh, I don't know the game that well.
Oh, okay.
I just understand like the basic principles of
Right.
what they're doing. There's like 3 rules to the game, and then you can play. But the strategy, that's the whole point. Is like the strategy is like
Goes on forever.
there's a million possibilities, and I guess that might be the meaning.
Yeah.
Because,
Duplicates.
have we talked about the concept of the show? But I don't think so.
No, we haven't even talked about the basic plot.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's your news story, Mike. So give us the plot.
Okay, so apparently sometime in the 80s during the Cold War, somewhere, they're in Germany or in Europe
I
somewhere.
think they're in Berlin.
They're in Berlin. And apparently sometime in the 80s, underneath an office building somewhere or some kind of government building, a rift was opened and leading to an alternate universe with an exact identical copy of the Earth. But ever since that rift happened, the 2 worlds have started to drift apart in similarities. So by the time we start the series, we are thrown into a world where one of the J.K. Simmonses we get to know is learning kind of what's going on along with us. And I won't say much more than that, but there are 2 J.K. Simmonses and 2 different worlds, Earths, that the show takes place in, and at least so far, based on what I've seen, it seems like it's pretty smartly written. It's not always executed the best, but I feel like, you know what, a lot of shows take a few episodes to find their legs. I'm definitely on board to see how the season, at least season 1, finishes.
Yeah, I feel like it's a cross between Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and Fringe, if you guys have ever seen either one of those.
I never watched Fringe. I was really interested in it, but I never got around to watching it before it was canceled. So then I was like, I have no reason to watch it because it's canceled.
Well, I mean, you can go back and watch them all.
Is it Fringe? Was Fringe canceled or was Fringe? No, I think I'm thinking of Flash Forward.
Oh, yeah.
Never mind. They both start with F.
Anyways, Fringe dealt with parallel worlds, and and then Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy is this Cold War era spy espionage.
Yeah, and I think that's where the game Go comes in, is because like the one point they make in the documentary is that like with chess, like from any one point, there's like a couple of hundred possible moves, but that can branch out from there. But with Go, there's like thousands and thousands of possibilities. Like if you make a certain move, like it can branch out to like, there's just so many more possibilities than like chess. And I guess that kind of ties in with like the timelines diverging or the parallel universes diverging and all the possibilities of like what can change things. And there's always like I think like a move in Go where you like really start to lose, and you can like generally chase it back to like way earlier moves that just lost you the game from the get-go. So it's appropriate. I don't know. And I kind of nerded out over it.
That's it for our Go podcast. Stay tuned.
Apologies. That's all I have to say about it.
Yeah, so that's Counterpart on Stars, starring J.K. Simmons. I believe it comes on Sunday nights. Check it out if you've got Stars.
Yes.
The other thing I wanted to talk about today was I guess it's a sequel reboot of Jumanji, Lost in the Jungle. Have you guys seen this?
No, not yet. I would watch it, but I haven't yet.
I haven't watched it either.
It's pretty good. Have you guys seen the original Jumanji from 1995?
Of course.
Yes.
Okay, so I was actually pleasantly surprised to find, since that movie came out whenever I was a young child, so I was like the perfect time to see that movie. I was actually pretty pleasantly surprised to find out that this one acknowledges that one, and it feels more like a sequel reboot instead of just like a reboot.
Right.
There's a couple Easter eggs in there that are fun. Yeah, I won't go much more into detail than that, but other than just, this is a fun movie. It's not anything to write home about, but...
Rental or go see in the theater?
Rental. I would say rental, but a solid rental. It's fun. The Rock is charming, Kevin Hart is charming, Jack Black is charming, and Karen Gillan is actually charming, of Doctor Who fame. She's also in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, but she's all bald and blue makeup, and her character sucks in those movies. So it's actually really fun to see her in Jumanji get to be funny.
I feel like this movie's get the kids around the TV Saturday night and make some popcorn at the house and watch it.
Yeah. It's the perfect movie to watch whenever you have other stuff going on and you don't know if you're going to be able to sit through a whole movie. But I don't know why I said that. I don't recommend doing that to anyone. I recommend watching any movie that you sit down to watch. But point is, this movie's pretty easy going.
How's Kevin Hart in it? Because generally speaking, when Kevin Hart is like the star of a show, I haven't been a fan. But like Kevin Hart as like a spice, as like a side character,
yeah,
I tend to enjoy him. Like I think what it is funny. I get tired of it with like a whole film.
Right. He's got the Will Ferrell problem, which is that like he's an interesting person and he's funny, but he's not funny enough to be a lead,
Right.
or interesting enough to be a lead.
Is it kind of like Anchorman, where like Will Ferrell's dividing the movie up between like him and 3 other people?
It's not as silly as something like Anchorman, but I will say that everyone has their time to shine. Like there's not a weak link in the cast, in my opinion.
Feels like The Rock and him play off really well.
Are they all carrying it equally, I guess, is my question?
Yeah, I would say they're all carrying it equally. Cool. Special shout out to The Rock and Jack Black.
Yeah. All right.
I think this is the funniest Jack Black has gotten to be in quite some time. As he gets the best role, in my opinion, because he gets to play the like 45-year-old fat man with the mind of like a teenage girl who doesn't want to be a 45-year-old fat man.
Yeah.
So watching Jack Black play that is pretty great.
Cool.
Yeah. What about you, Justin? What's on your mind?
Yeah, well, what is on my mind is that we have the new slate of Criterion releases, the releases for May of 2018 that were announced this last week. And I want to talk about those because we are a Criterion Collection podcast, at least in these episodes. So
always exciting.
So what do we got?
Yeah, let's go over them. So first up, we've got 2 here, both coming out May 22nd from the director Criterion Mungiu. I'm going to say that's how to pronounce it. It looks like a Romanian director. And the 2 films are Graduation, which was from 2016, and Beyond the Hills, which is from 2012. And so have either of you guys seen these movies? Heard of them?
I have not.
I have not.
Yeah, I have not either. I think I saw them mentioned in the New Year's Criterion drawing.
Mm-hmm. They had the hats in the
background.
background.
There's the Graduation hats that were behind the hills or beyond the hills.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of where I saw these teased before. But otherwise, I don't know anything about them other than people seem really, really excited about them. And the covers are interesting. They're just kind of pictures, not really any sort of like design elements going on other than fonts, but they seem like interesting images to me.
I think the Graduation guy kind of looks like John Goodman.
Yeah, sure. Yep. Any thoughts on these? Or should we just move on?
Yeah, I don't have any thoughts. I haven't seen them or heard of them, so
yeah,
my thoughts would not be very meaningful.
Yeah, mine either. So before that, we have a May 8th release of Moonrise by Frank Borzage. It's a American film. It's 1948. I know nothing about this one, and it says in the description here that Frank Borzage was one of Hollywood's most neglected masters. So that's apparent to me because I've never heard of him. Yeah,
checks out.
Yeah, and then another one that was teased in the New Year's drawing, The Other Side of Hope by Aki Kaurismäki, Finnish director here. I think he's had some other films that are on the collection that I really like the cover arts that they do. They're really intriguing. I've just never got around to watching them. Like I think.
Cool. I haven't heard of that one either.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, I see. Like La Havre is. I think that's the other one that is on Criterion Collection that has like a very similar cover style. And those covers intrigue me. And I think like I don't know about you guys, but that's kind of how I got into Criterion Collection was going through like Barnes and Noble and like used movie stores and seeing this thing called the Criterion Collection that had like really interesting cover arts.
Right.
Yeah. Classy covers that were well thought out and individual to each movie.
Yeah. And I wasn't even like studying what films were good. I was just going through and like looking at like what had the coolest cover and bought that. That's how I ended up like buying like Videodrome and Harakiri, I think were 2
definitely.
that like really stuck out to me. And I was like, I have to buy this immediately.
Videodrome had the coolest DVD case. It has the same Blu-ray case, but the DVD case was cooler because it was like a double DVD case, and the side of it looked like a VHS with tape on it.
Yeah.
The Blu-ray is too small to actually convincingly look like a VHS.
Yeah. Still cool, but yeah, it being closer to like the same size was part of the appeal, I think. Cool. Okay, so then back to May 22nd, now that we've fixed our mistake. We have Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters by Paul Schrader. And this is an update because this was out on DVD before. So this is a Blu-ray. Have you guys seen this film?
I have not.
I have not either.
Me neither. One of my friends has seen it, and he says it's really great. I think Paul Schrader, he's the guy who wrote Taxi Driver.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
I'm already interested based on that.
Yeah, definitely. I want to see it.
And I've heard this is a really beautiful film too. So I don't know. It's just one that's like it's kind of bugging me that it's always I've never seen it, but it's always one that has been on my list that I heard about forever ago. So I kind of feel like I need to watch it now so that I can like get it on Blu-ray. I think it's one thing like I don't know. Do you guys find that like if something's just on DVD for Criterion that like it doesn't feel as important to get to like in a timely manner because you'd rather it be on Blu-ray?
Yeah, I would say that. But then again, with streaming, I don't know if it matters because everything looks the same on like streaming quality. Well, I guess not everything, but
yeah, it's fair. I guess I just find myself focusing on the Blu-ray releases because I know they're gonna look like, at least like for current technology,
sure,
the best way possible, at least compared to DVD.
I haven't bought a DVD Criterion in quite some time, but I will still fork it over for a Blu-ray, easy, you know.
Yeah.
So, I in that sense, yeah, you're right. I won't even consider owning a movie unless it's on Blu-ray.
Yeah, definitely.
Anymore.
Okay, moving on. We got two more. So both coming out May 29th. The first one is John Schlesinger's Midnight Cowboy.
Ooh.
Which is the most exciting one to me because this one I've seen compared to the last ones we've been talking about.
Yeah, right.
And if you remember when we did the one of our episodes, we did like the best picture, our top 3 of the best picture winners or something like that. And Midnight Cowboy was on mine because I really, really love this movie. And I think I have a really awful looking like Blu-ray edition with like really bad cover art.
I think this is my favorite cover art of the 5 of the movies that are coming out in May.
Yeah, I think mine too. I think maybe once you see the movie, some of these other cover arts might have like a lot more weight to them. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just on pure cover design, this one's really fun.
Yeah, certainly. I really dig the cover art for Midnight Cowboy. And I absolutely hate the DVD cover art that I own, which is just terrible and ugly.
It is. I think it's just like a still from the movie, but it doesn't even seem like a high quality photography still. It seems just like a freeze frame.
Yeah, exactly. It's not good looking. So I'm all about owning a Criterion Blu-ray of this movie. I haven't even seen it in like 7 years or more, so I would actually like to watch this movie again too.
Yeah, I don't know I guess I watched it probably a couple of years ago.
What spine number is it?
DVD. It's going to be spine number 925.
Nice. We're almost there.
Yeah.
About 30 more years.
Only 912 away. Cool. And then the last film is another upgrade from one that was on DVD to Blu-ray. It's Alhasser Balthazar.
That's
and by Robert Bresson. It's a French film, and I just want you guys to give me a little bit of credit for taking the bullet here and trying to pronounce all of these films.
Yeah. Good job, sir.
I feel I've struggled my way through it. Thank you. But so this one I own on DVD. And have either of you guys seen it?
I've seen it. I do not own it, though.
I haven't seen it. Is this French New Wave?
I think technically
Okay.
it's within. I don't know that it's within that genre like strictly, but it's made around like the same time, and it's kind of like unconventional. Like it's just sort of we follow this donkey as it goes from like owner to owner rather than follow like a person.
Like Warhorse.
Yes, like Warhorse. So yeah, I don't know. I liked it. I wasn't wild about it, but it's certainly one that I've always wanted to revisit again, and now I think I have reason to now that it's out on Blu-ray.
Absolutely.
Yeah, nice. I'm excited to revisit it too.
All right, overall thoughts? You think like generally this month is pretty cool? There's kind of a lot.
Yeah, it's not my favorite month, but I'm definitely excited to watch Midnight Cowboy again and also dive into some rarer movies that I haven't seen yet.
Me too.
Which is obviously the appealing point of the Criterion Collection, is introducing you to important and cool movies that you otherwise might not even know about. So,
speaking of important and cool movies that you otherwise might not even know about, do you guys want to talk about Silence of the Lambs?
Nope. Yes.
Yeah, podcast over.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
You haven't made that joke in so long, Chris.
I quit.
Good morning.
Dr. Lecter, my name is Clarice Starling. May I speak with you?
You're one of Jack Crawford's, aren't you?
I am, yes.
May I see your credentials?
Certainly.
Closer, please. Closer.
Okay, so Silence of the Lambs, spine number 13 from Criterion Collection, directed by Jonathan Demme, the late Jonathan Demme. You think he passed away a few years ago, right? No, he definitely did. I don't know how many years ago it was. It was 2-3 years ago. I don't think it's that important, but yeah, it is the story of a young FBI cadet played by Jodie Foster, who must receive the help of an incarcerated and manipulative cannibal killer who is played by Anthony Hopkins. It's Hannibal Lecter, to help catch another serial killer, a madman who skins his victims. And that is the IMDb synopsis. So if it sucks, email IMDb.
Yeah, he died April 26th, 2017, by the way.
Oh, just recently, huh?
Oh,
yeah, I did.
So
I
not
did
even
not know
even a year, not even a year ago.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, I also think it's worth mentioning real quick that this just got a Blu-ray upgrade on Criterion that came out like last week.
Oh, right. So they got the rights to it again.
Yeah, so it has like a brand new, awesome Criterion version, which I don't have. I actually still have the DVD.
Yeah,
which is
it has a beautiful cover.
So I'm super excited to pick that one up.
For the longest time, this was out of print, and you couldn't get it from at least the Criterion Collection one.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a DVD version of it that came, like a special edition DVD that came out in between Criterion releases.
Right. Just as a starting point, I wanted to, especially since this movie is just recent, is in our lifetime type of thing. I was wondering what each of our first exposure was to this movie. We were all young when it came out, but Mike, what was your first exposure to Silence of the Lambs?
Mine was probably my grandpa or my mom owning the VHS. My family always owned a lot of movies when I was a kid, which is kind of how I started watching a lot of movies whenever I was young. I would just basically go to this big cabinet full of movies and just pull out VHSs of like action movies and all kinds of stuff that I was way too young to watch, and I would be able to just watch it with like my grandpa or my mom. But I remember the cover for Silence of the Lambs being very scary. This was 1992, 93, probably, when I was seeing the VHS, and would have made me like 5 or 6.
When you first watched it?
No, when I first saw the cover, right?
Okay.
And I remember it being a huge deal with like the moth or the butterfly in her mouth,
Mm-hmm.
I remember everyone was talking about that movie when I was a little kid. So the first time I actually watched it was probably, I don't know, I was 12, 13, and I had satellite available in my room, and I remember it came on, and I was like, this is it. I'm a grown-up now. I'm watching it. And I did, and I gotta say, I remember very distinctly when that movie was over, I remember thinking that wasn't scary at all. It was just great. I think up to that point, I think it might have been the best movie I had ever seen. I remember very, very distinctly watching it and thinking when it was starting, I hope I'm not too young for this. I hope it doesn't scare me. And it didn't scare me at all because I don't think it's a scary movie. But my mom had always described it as scary.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember all the adults that I knew at the time were super disturbed by it, and it was like a hot button topic, and everyone was just talking about how amazing it was. What about you guys? Do you guys remember any of it at all from when you were young?
Yeah. I guess I have kind of a similar story, but I'll preface it a little bit by saying when I was a kid, I was a giant wimp when it came to like horror movies or scary movies, to the point where like my cousins and my stepmom were like super into them, and they would go to the video store like every weekend and rent like Amityville Horror or Poltergeist or The Exorcist or one of those films, and like I would stay out of the living room the whole night. Like I knew I was just gonna hang out in my room just by myself. Like I wouldn't even watch them. Like I'd like run by the TV like with like my hand hiding the TV from my eyes, like to the kitchen to get a drink or something, and then run back to my room. And and it was like during that time that I first heard about it. Maybe it's irrelevant, but like I remember the first time hearing the name and the concept in a hospital room. I was with my dad. We were visiting somebody, and he was flipping through channels on TV, and it came on, or it was on TV, or maybe the trailer for it was on the commercial. And he's like, oh, this is Silence of the Lambs. It's a movie about a guy who eats people. And to me, that was like, that's terrifying. And I was like forever scared of it. And I remember passing it in like the movie store, like the video store aisles with that cover art that you were talking about, Mike. And it just terrified me. And I was so scared of it. And so I never watched it. I didn't really watch any horror movie until I was like at least like 16, probably.
What a wimp.
Right. And I don't know that I was scared all the way up till 16. It's just that I was doing other things until I was 16, and I started dating girls who wanted to watch scary movies with me. I think I didn't have any interest in them, partially, I guess, probably from my childhood. But I think I watched this probably when I was like 19. And yeah, I was like, what the heck? This isn't scary at all. It's not necessarily about someone who eats people. That's not what this movie's about. Like, I thought that's all it was going to be. It was like someone chopping up people and like chasing them down and killing them and eating them. But like,
sure,
that, yeah. So Chris,
it's not even really a horror movie, but
no, not at all.
For later. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go on, Chris.
My first exposure was I was like in grade school, so like 6th grade, and some older kid, some girl told me like the whole like described everything that happened to it, the whole movie to me. And she's like, yeah, and this guy wears a face. And I was just like, what kind of movie are you watching? You know, like, why would you watch that? Like, he's like dressing up in other people's faces and stuff. And so that was my first exposure. And then since I knew everything that happened, I did not watch it till probably around the same age as Justin, or even later, because I just never really. I'm not sure why the first time I watched it was, but I picked it up, and then watching it again for the second time was really good. But yeah, it was just funny. That girl, she just described everything in detail, and it was.
Yeah, I think it's the concepts of the movie are a lot scarier and horrifying than like what the actual movie is, which I think is one of the things that makes the movie work.
Yeah, I think so too. And
I guess just generally, this is probably my third or fourth time to see the movie since I watched it for the first time, and it just gets better every time. Like I really, it's just great. I don't think there's like a sour note in the whole film.
Yeah, I was gonna say I watched it last night, and it was the first time I had seen it in probably 10 years, 15 years. Well, maybe not 15, but closer to 10. And I gotta say, man, this movie holds up.
Yeah.
There's some dated clothes and some dated technology, but other than that, this movie, it really holds up. And I was going to mention this, that I was thinking about this when I was watching it the latest time, that the first time I saw this, it must have been sometime before or around 5th or 6th grade for me. And I think I watched it too early. Not because it was scary, but because most like police detective procedural movies about catching a serial killer that I've seen since then have all fallen short. Like, it's not a genre that I particularly enjoy, because I feel like this was like the highest bar that could possibly be set by that genre, and I've compared every movie unfairly to Silence of the Lambs since then.
It's like the first Journey song you hear is "Don't Stop Believin'," and then someone tries to show you every other Journey song, and you're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, like I get it. Faithfully's fine, but it's no Don't Stop Believing. Yeah, no, exactly. So it kind of just ruined police, detective, catch the serial killer procedural type dramas. Like, that was a big thing in the 90s, those movies. Like Ashley Judd type movies and Morgan Freeman type movies and Matthew McConaughey type movies. There was a lot of like...
Yeah, they're all actually trying to be Silence of the Lambs.
Right, yeah. A lot of like Kiss the Girls or Double Jeopardies and just like...
not Play It to the Bone. The Bone Collector.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, just like... movies that they may not all be bad, but they all seem kind of lame.
Yeah,
like a carbon copy of Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
And the ones that I've seen don't even hold a candle to this.
No, I'll extend that to like CSI and stuff. Like, I don't have an interest in those because, how can they be as good?
Yeah, well, those are not very good. Yeah,
they're police procedurals.
Right.
What do you want?
No.
Yeah.
I think, watching it again, this movie is so far ahead of its time, I think. It's so suspenseful. Like, every time I knew the way that it was cutting back and forth at the very end, I knew what it was doing, but it still got me. I still fell for it.
Yeah.
I love the acting was great on all fronts with Scott Glenn. And then they would do those shots where they would like talk directly to the camera. They're kind of like Jodie Foster's point of view shots.
Yeah, we can.
Oh, I was just going through. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, it's fine.
But anyways, I just really enjoyed this movie quite a bit.
I think worth noting, this film is the third film in history to win all 5 of like the big 5 Academy Awards, which is Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Director, and Best Screenplay. And
adapted screenplay.
Yes, it won adapted screenplay, but I guess if you win either screenplay one, it's considered the big 5.
It's still a win.
But yeah, it was also nominated for Best Sound and Editing, which it didn't win. But the other 2 films, just for reference, that won the big 5 were It Happened One Night, which is also on the Criterion Collection, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is not, but maybe one day will be.
It should be.
Yeah.
Real quick, before we get too far off this subject, I wanted to go ahead and mention the other movies that were up for Best Picture that year that it did not, or that it won against. So that year was 1992, and it was up against JFK.
Good one.
Yeah. Bugsy, the Warren Beatty movie.
I remember it being good, but haven't seen it in forever.
Yeah, The Prince of Tides with Barbara Streisand, and Beauty and the Beast, the Disney animated movie. I've seen 3 of those. I have not seen Prince of Tides, but I've seen JFK, Bugsy, and Beauty and the Beast. I would definitely say Silence of the Lambs trumps those.
Yeah, by far.
Easily.
I think it's I mean, decent competition. Like that's,
Sure.
None of those movies are, at least the ones I've seen, are anything to like scoff at, or like that maybe are really terrible in hindsight.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think Beauty and the Beast is a good one to win against, because that movie has stood the test of time.
Yeah. I think both of those movies, this one and Beauty and the Beast, like you can go back and watch, and they don't feel dated. But you were right about this one. The clothes may look outdated, but this movie is, you don't feel that age on it.
Oh no, it's tight. It's a sharp movie that it holds up. Like it's just fantastically paced, fantastically edited, acted, everything, you name it. Before we get too far into it, there is one thing I wanted to bring up about the very beginning of the movie, because I always thought it stood out from any other movie that I've seen before or since, and that is the opening credits.
Yeah.
I don't know, I remember the first time I saw this movie, the opening credits even seemed on a different level. It's big, bold, black font with like a white border around it.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, that image of the title of the movie popping up while she's on the obstacle course,
Mm-hmm.
training, that has stayed with me for years. I have never forgotten that image. And I don't know what it is about that big, bold, black font, but it just seems eerie and unsettling, and you don't see that font in movies very often. Even since then, I can't think of any movies that have opening credit font quite like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember the font specifically, but I think the title sequence itself is really good.
Yeah, it called it out. I don't think I would have mentioned it, but you saying something about it makes it. It did look unique. But yeah, I agree.
And it's just, I like accomplishing things during the credits, just for like economy of storytelling, like setting up a lot about who she is, and like without us having to like get to dialogue of like learning that she's in training, and, seeing like her perseverance and like how she goes through the obstacle course, she's like a strong woman without all taken care of during the credits, rather than like credits over black.
Right.
I don't necessarily think that's the only way to make credit sequences, or the only right way to do it, but I just like it.
But yeah, we understand who she is, a little bit about her, without having to worry about. Yeah, it just gets us right in there.
It sets her up like perfectly before the credits are even finished. It's either within a couple of minutes, or even maybe during the opening credits still popping up. You see that shot of her getting in the elevator. There's already been like a shot of like guys checking her out, and then she gets in the elevator and she's like a good 2.5 feet shorter than everyone else in that elevator.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really funny shot.
Yeah, and that's a perfect shot to set it up. Before the opening credits are over, before she even has a speaking part, we know her plight, we know what she's putting up with, and we know everything we need to know about her going forward, right?
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's like an important thing to set up, because it's like one of the big themes that goes throughout the whole movie is like her in this world that's like she's just surrounded by men. Like it's just like male dominated world, and like, with the elevator shot, everyone's like taller than her, right? So while like height doesn't necessarily have anything to do with detective work per se,
it's
like,
an obvious visual clue.
Yeah, exactly. And then even going beyond that, on top of being surrounded by men who, like, I think there's probably, I mean, like at this time, would have like lessened her chances in the workplace. Like I think as a woman, like she would have had a harder time getting like a promotion over a man, like that sort of, you have like all of those sort of ideas, but also like so many of the men, because she's like one of the only women around, are checking her out, right? Like constantly, like even towards the end of the movie, there's a scene where she's like walking through like an airport or something like that. And like, the guys walking by her, just like civilian guys, are like looking at her and like just checking her out. And I think you can tell that she knows and is just kind of ignoring it.
Yeah. She's a fish out of water. She's this, and it's one of the reasons I didn't, the first time I watched this movie, maybe I was too young at the time, but like I didn't necessarily recognize that, but she's a woman outside of her natural element. And it's really progressive. Like this movie could be made today and still feel the same, right?
Yeah, I think it would still ruffle feathers today.
Yeah,
maybe even more so if it was a newer movie.
But there's this one moment, at least talking about the feminism aspect of it. But Scott Glenn the person has been murdered and they're at the mortuary, and Scott Glenn asks, he's like, look, I don't want to talk about these sex crimes in front of a woman. And he doesn't say it necessarily exactly like that, but that's what's insinuated. And so him and the sheriff go off into the to another room, and they're not going to speak in front of her about sex, right? And then later on, and I thought this was a really good scene between Scott Glenn, and it was really simple, really small. But Scott Glenn says, like, look, hey, I'm sorry. I did that so that they wouldn't, give you a hard time or something like that. He was like, I was trying to help you out. And then she says, look, like, everything you do matters. And then Scott Glenn listens to her, and he's not like, oh, like, stupid woman, I'll do what I want. But he listens to her, and is like, okay, I see your point, and going forward, I'll fix it, And I thought that was a really a great moment in the movie.
But does he, though? Does he even really learn anything from that? Because I was actually going to talk about that too. He is like her in, right? Like one character, I think it's Hannibal Lecter, even mentions that, oh, you like him and he likes you. Like, you guys have a good relationship and everything's going great. But if that's her best relationship, her professional relationship, that's the one she likes, the person that she likes, right? And he still treats her that way. Even at the end of the movie, when she's busting her ass to save the day, he's like, thinks he's got the right guy. And he's like, oh, we couldn't have done this without you, but you just stay there and do, like, girl work. We'll take care of everything.
I didn't take that as girl work. He's like, I'm already too far away. You won't catch, but you do the groundwork to build the case back.
But he could have cut her in. I still feel like her the one guy that, like, looks out for her and trusts her still views her not as an equal. Is kind of the vibe that I got throughout the movie.
That could be true. I just like that moment. I think I had a better, or I looked at Scott Glenn as a better person.
Sure. No, and I remember the scene you're talking about in the car, whenever he's, like, sleeping, and he's like, he wakes up and he's like, that really rubbed you the wrong way whenever I said that stupid sexist thing, didn't it? and she's like, it really did bother me because it was stupid and sexist. Yeah.
So what did you make in regards to that of what Hannibal says about him? Like, the first time that she meets Hannibal, he's talking about, like, oh, you and him are friends, like, do you like each other? Have you, I don't remember if he asks if they've slept together, but he mentioned something like, do you think he's thought about you naked, thought about doing things with you? He kind of implies that that's their relationship in his estimation, which he's right about a lot of other things, like, that he evaluates and makes assumptions on. Do you think there's anything to that, or do you think that's Hannibal manipulating?
I think it doesn't matter. I think it is him manipulating, whether it's true or not. He doesn't know Scott Glenn's character, but he's a psychiatrist. Guess. Yeah, so he probably has a pretty good idea. And I think that even if he's wrong, Clarice Starling thinks that Hannibal has a pretty good idea. So mission accomplished, because either way, he sowed those those seeds of doubt. Yeah,
does Clarice, every other man she deals with, like, every time she walks by, stares at her ass and tits, like, why wouldn't this man, like, where I get, like, a fatherly vibe from him, like, she expects this from every man anyways, so of course, every man that she runs into checks her out, and so why wouldn't he be any different?
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned earlier, Chris, like, the point of view shots are really interesting, because there's something very unusual when you see, like, a point of view shot like that where someone's talking directly into the camera as though it's like you're in the eyes of the character, basically. For me, it always, like, it's kind of uneasy for me. It's almost like when you have, like, a direct eye contact with a person sometimes and you get uncomfortable. But I think psychologically it's done, like, very effectively to put you in her shoes, right? And to see what she sees, like, these men that are over her in terms of, like, power and position, and, like, looking into her, like, right into her eyes, and, like, seeing them looking, because we don't ever get that shot of her, right?
I think there's a scene with her and her friend where they're sitting, like, on the other woman that's in the FBI trainee, and I think we get Jodie Foster looking into the camera. I know we do the friend.
Yeah, I'd have to pay attention on another viewing, because it's not something that I really caught onto until later, but, like, I'd really want to watch and see, do we ever get a shot of Jodie Foster where she's looking into the camera talking?
Particularly disturbing with that is the Hannibal sequences when he's looking directly at you. That's disturbing and creepy.
Yeah, It's super effective, to quote Pokemon.
How about that scene where she actually first meets Hannibal? Like, what an introduction. So she's going down the hallway, and then like right at the very end, right before she meets him, like she tells the warden guy like, "Oh, sorry, you can't come in here with me," or whatever. And he's like, "Oh, you could have told me that before wasting my time and making me walk all the way down here."
Oh yeah.
And she's like, "Yeah, but I wouldn't have enjoyed like the pleasure of your company."
Yeah.
And he's like, and he kind of gives like this look like, "I know my company wasn't pleasurable, whatever." Like,
yeah, that guy was super creepy. The one that was like, "I'll show you the town. Come out with me."
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought the intro to Hannibal was so great because right when you're getting ready to meet him, and then all of a sudden they throw this like picture that you can't see at Clarice, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, like just when you think he's safe, like this is what he did to some innocent nurse that was just trying to help him, right? Like he bit her face or something, her tongue out.
Yeah.
And you never see the picture, but right away, like what a chilling, like
we
my
just
girlfriend,
see
my
her
girlfriend
reaction.
Yeah, my girlfriend who has actually seen this movie before, and she's actually a fan of like the Hannibal TV show. I think she remembered Hannibal as a different character because it's been kind of romanticized in like the franchising since then, right? But seeing that scene again, that's the intro right before you see him, like, oh, this is the kind of guy that will bite the tongue off of an innocent woman if the opportunity is there.
Yeah.
And it benefits him. And so like what an unsettling, chilling way to introduce us to this guy, right?
Yeah. And that builds it up so much, and then we get the walk down the hallway to him, where you see these like insane, crazy people.
And you're like, how could he be worse than these people?
Yeah, and you think he's like going to be worse, and I think that's kind of like a build up and like not quite paying off your expectations, but in a way you do, because he does have that intense look about him, but it's also just like a guy dressed in white and with like nice hair, and he's not acting crazy and like yelling things at her, right? Like
he looks like a sweet old man.
Yeah. It's a really amazing introduction.
Are you guys, so you think he looks like a sweet old man? Like when I first see him,
he looks like a harmless old man. He doesn't look like a dangerous old man that could hurt you physically.
Yeah.
When you first see him.
He's got these eyes, and you know stuff about him, but like just on...
I'm unnerved by him. He's just standing like perfectly still.
Well, yeah, when he talks.
Even before, like just, I mean, like when you see him, like I feel like that first shot of him is unnerving. I mean, sure, he's not crazy and he's not running around, you know.
Yeah, that's all I mean. I don't necessarily think he looks like a sweet old man.
Oh, okay.
No, maybe sweet old man's not the right way to describe it, but he looks like an old man. Like an old man that I wouldn't be like, what a dangerous...
Well, yeah, if I saw him on the street, but he's just standing there perfectly still and his eyes are just watching her. And
which I think was what really adds to like his creepiness and like the character, is that like you go down these other rooms and see these crazy people, and he's this crazy cannibal,
right? And
that's it. And so like you have these expectations, and it builds up of like, what is this guy going to be like? And then he's just really calm and collected, and that makes it like super unnerving.
Yeah.
It's almost like the calm collected is even more unnerving than like the crazy yelling people.
Right. Well, and also even when he's incarcerated, people still refer to him as Dr. Lecter, which, referring to someone who we know to be so insane with such respect and like a title that demands such respect, is also kind of in itself genius, I think, because calling like a completely evil person that you can't identify with at all as like doctor, who is smarter than you, who understands human psychology better than you ever could, and chooses to be a cannibal anyway.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Kind of like the other inmates, they'll hurt you. They're crazy, but they do it out of passion, out of like, just this emotion. Whereas like Hannibal Lecter just sits there watching you, and you just think that he's just thinking of all the different, he's playing Go in his head. He's thinking of the 1,000 different moves that he can make.
Well, sure, the first thing he does is systematically starts trying to make Clarice doubt the FBI around her.
Right.
And like all the people that she trusts, like Scott Glenn, you know.
Right.
The first thing he does is being like, oh, you're just some stupid student. Why do you send me a student? I'm a genius. You don't stand a chance. It's basically like the vibe that he wants to unnerve her, and he does.
Yeah. Do you guys ever find yourself, like, Hannibal's not in it very much, but do you ever find yourself rooting for him in this movie? Like, kind of on his side? Like, he's helping Clarice out?
Maybe when I was little, but This time I did not feel that way at all. I actually just felt nothing but contempt for Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, I'm a little conflicted because I think he's such an interesting character that, you know, you kind of love to hate him.
Yeah.
You know, and so like I don't want him to get caught and killed, you know, because I like watching him do stuff and analyze people and like kind of fuck with people, you know. And obviously, if it was a real person, I wouldn't feel that way. But like as a character in a movie, it's so fascinating.
Right.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say I ever root for him so much as I just enjoy watching him. But I almost root for the opposite, right? Like I root for him not to get his way because he's so smug and so scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess we could talk about like the murder case that they're going on of, which is for this guy they've nicknamed Buffalo Bill. And what did you guys think of the like the scene where he abducts the girl? I know that like my girlfriend is like super creeped out by like that scene and that sort of thing. And she was very like on nerve, even though she's seen the movie before. I think this is like that sort of thing that's like this super real innocent thing like really bothers her. That like it's just someone who looks like they need help. They have a broken arm.
So he's trying to load the couch into the back of his van, and then he asks for help, and the unwitting girl, the kidnappee, comes over to her, or to him, and he takes her away.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's scary.
It's the simplicity of it, right? Like the simplicity of the plan, but the effectiveness of it.
Yeah, I guess I was looking up that they, for the character of Buffalo Bill, they combined several different serial killers into one, which I think it was like Ed Gein,
right.
like, skinned his victims. Another killer who I couldn't, his name I wasn't familiar with, like I am Ed Gein, but who kept his victims like in a pit in his basement. And then the third was Ted Bundy, who would put on a fake cast, and that's how he would lure his victims in. Even there's a very bad Ted Bundy movie out there that I think is just called Ted Bundy. But I watched it on TV once with an old girlfriend, like back when we were in high school, and like she could not watch the movie with me because his method was so like simple and innocent, and like I guess you can really see yourself easily being fooled by that, and that's what it makes it really effective to me, and you know even bothers me like as a male.
Oh, certainly, it's a very disturbing scene. It's filmed from I guess her point of view, the girl who gets abducted. And she looks over there, and she's like, "Oh, I'm coming up, cat. Don't worry, I'll feed you." And then she like looks over there and sees this guy, and you know what's going on, but she doesn't. And you think to yourself, like, man, if I saw something like this in real life, I don't know that I would have an insanely different reaction than her, you know?
Well, it's a catch-22. You're a jerk if you don't go help, right? You're an asshole, and if you do, you're captured by a serial killer.
Yeah, I think that's genius, and I also think it's something that people should see, because as mean as it is, you know, I don't think you should help everyone. Don't approach them at night by yourself. You know, there's just certain things you gotta be on the lookout for. This, like, as a woman, I feel like.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like, as a woman, like all those
scary.
So Jodie Foster runs around. Every guy's checking her out. Like every guy to Jodie Foster is a potential Ted Bundy, right, or potential Buffalo Bill. You know, like in a women's world, that's sometimes how they need to see and operate in their world so they don't get hurt or they don't get in trouble, is what I understand after having talked about those things with women. I'm a man, so I don't necessarily see the world that way, but I've had friends that have told me that, you know, like, we feel safe walking down a dark street, you know, after spending the night at the bar or whatever, whereas, like, the woman's like, nope, I'm going to walk an extra 2 blocks so I don't have to walk down that dark alley, you know?
Yeah, so when they start finding bodies, we get the scene where they do, like, I guess like an autopsy and examine the dead body. Maybe it's not quite an autopsy, but whatever. They're looking through, and they find the cocoon in the throat of the body. And I think, and I guess this is where we get into like these first signs of what's really going on with Buffalo Bill and like the psychological things of what he's doing. And, you know, I guess I don't really know what I want to say about this actually right now. I just think it's like, it's really interesting.
Well, at first you're like, what could the symbolism possibly be? Like, what would the reasoning be for such a thing? Like, what, like, it makes sense from like his point of view, from Buffalo Bill's point of view, right? Like he wants to transform. He wants to become something else. He wants to become beautiful. He wants to go from something ugly and terrible and transform through this cocoon-like state into something beautiful. But the first time you're watching such, and maybe if someone watched this movie for the first time now, they would see it coming, or they would be able to put it together pretty quick. But back before serial killer procedurals became such like a genre of itself, I feel like this was something crazy, you know, like the idea of trying to put your brain into this killer, and like what could the symbolism for a moth possibly be, you know? And like in retrospect, it's so obvious.
Yeah.
But I feel like at the time there weren't many movies, or maybe it was a book thing because this was a book first, obviously. It was like a sequel to Red Dragon, I think, even. But I don't think movies really focused too much on like the psychology of serial killers, right?
Yeah, maybe. Well, I just really like it because that's what, like, there's this really interesting turn that gives you something to think about other than like a whodunit, or like how are we gonna catch this guy or whatever, you know, who is he? It gives your brain, because you get a little while before I think they full on explain the significance to you. And I think it's just one of those touches that I find really, really interesting, that really like keep the movie going and like keep the momentum going.
And not only does he skin his victims, but why is he putting things in their throats afterwards? You know, why is he like, the motivation is as much mystery as anything, you know, like, or as the whodunit. We already know who's done it though in this, because they've revealed Buffalo Bill. We just don't know how to get to him, right?
Right. Yeah. Like, who is Buffalo Bill and where is he? Yeah. And I guess maybe it leaves you a little something to think about just in the whole concept of killers, or serial killers specifically, like leaving that like identifying
calling card.
Yeah. So, and
I think he sees it as like a blessing too, right? Like, thank you, you know, like this is one of these butterflies in a cocoon. I appreciate it.
Yeah. But we can move on from that, because maybe it's just kind of an interesting story device to me, and an interesting thing to like help keep the movie going and give you like these other things to think about, and introducing these new elements. And I think another one of those too is the whole thing where Hannibal and Clarice are talking, and he makes her tell the story of when she was living on the farm and was only there for a couple of years or a couple of months or something, and she ran away and discovered, like, because she discovered this lamb slaughter, and she's telling all about this. And I think there's so much to think about and like try to figure out. And I think like the movie gives you just enough time to like really get your brain turning on those things before it tells you the answer, because it's kind of movie where you don't really walk away with a whole lot to think about. Like, all the thinking is done during the movie, like figuring stuff out, and then by the end you have all the answers.
Yeah,
right. You're more, at the end of it, you're more just fascinated by the excellent execution of everything you just saw.
Right.
Not so much the lasting questions.
Yeah.
I liked the scene whenever Hannibal was trying to get the information out of her about the lambs and the farm, and the quid pro quo scene where it's like he's already solved this case. He knows what's going on. He is interested in this girl. That's what he's in it for, right? Like, she's in it for one thing, and he's like, I'll humor you with your stupid questions, but I just want to know the basic facts about you so I can do my job, and like something I haven't been able to do in years, you know, like understand your psyche. And then once he understands it, his job is to make her, I guess in his mind, is to make her uncomfortable and just fuck with her, basically. Like, I don't know, to me that was great. Like, you can tell he's been waiting for this for years. He hasn't seen a woman in 8 years, and I don't know if he probably has toyed with men's minds too, right? But I just have a feeling
to the other inmate, right?
Yeah, he
convinced
him to kill himself.
Yeah,
in defense of her, though.
Right.
So I think he's clearly like a straight man who likes women, but he's so smart that it's almost like he has no interest in hurting her, just fucking with her mentally and upsetting her and just really understanding what makes her tick. And I think there's a certain elements of that's disturbing, right? Because when someone who's so messed up and scary takes that kind of interest in not the FBI, not in the case, but in you, there's certainly something disturbing in that I think Jodie Foster taps into really well. She's disturbed by it, but she's also intrigued by it.
Yeah. I think her performance, like particularly like that scene, where she's talking about the lamb slaughter, is really, really good. And I think, like you said, she's portraying all of these like things that are going on, like a person who's like having their head fucked with. And yeah, she's really good. And like, I think overall the performances are really great. And I think kind of the shining stars of these movies, like, are the scenes between Hannibal and her and like their relationship as it develops. Like at a certain point, like the murder and the Buffalo Bill things like sometimes feel secondary, at least like while they're in like those moments. It's like I kind of stopped caring about the murders and stuff and just want to see the scenes continue with them. Like every time a scene with them was over, I was like, oh no, I can't wait for the next time that they get together.
Yeah, certainly. There's some Act 2 stuff that focuses on Hannibal for long periods of time while he's doing cool things.
Yeah, kind of back to kind of what Mike was saying real quick before, but like cannibal not only eats flesh, but like he enjoys the psyche as much as he enjoys eating flesh. You know, like that's just as savory to him. Is like,
well, it's like foreplay to the...
Yeah, those nuggets. Yeah, because when he eats the flesh, he thinks about those things. I mean, we don't really necessarily get into that in this movie, but other aspects of Hannibal. But anyways, I just wanted he likes eating both those things. So
a man with multiple appetites.
Yeah.
And so do you guys want to talk about Hannibal's breakout scene? Because I kind of do a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
I have a question real quick. So as he's escaping, so it's the scene right before he escapes, and him and Jodie Foster are talking, and then he gives her the notes. Remember, like he's like, take these, and because she's being escorted out because she's not supposed to be there, and then he hands the notes to her and rubs his finger along her hand.
He touches her finger.
Yeah, which is super creepy.
First time he's touched a woman in like almost a decade, I guess.
At first, when I first saw it on the second viewing just recently, like I was like, is that a clue? Is that how, like, is he trying to tell her something in that? But the fact that it's not a clue, is just so like creepy and weird in it. Yeah.
There was one scene that took place right before that, and I'm sorry, we'll get back to the breakout in just a second. But there was a scene whenever he's talking to the victim's mom, like the politician lady, and like she's like, "Get this monster out of here," or whatever, and he's like, "Love your suit," or whatever. Like, do you think that's because he knows her daughter is becoming a suit?
Oh, that's interesting. I actually didn't take it that way. I thought he was.
That's how I took it the last time. I took it as like, it's a comment to fuck with her now, but she doesn't quite understand it, and she won't understand it until this is all done. But when she finally does, she's gonna look back at that comment where Hannibal's like, "Love your suit," and be like, "Oh God, my daughter was being made into a suit, and that fucking guy knew it."
Yeah. I think that's probably correct. I think that's astute.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I noticed that last night, and I was like, "Whoa." Yeah. Burn.
I also think it's a good time to bring up something that I read that I thought was just an interesting thing about Anthony Hopkins, like getting ready to do this role or preparing for the role. Is he describes like the voice that he adopted as a combination of Truman Capote and Katharine Hepburn, and your impression, I think, was pretty good of the "love your suit."
Thank you.
And sounds like, I think like that's like kind of the perfect representation of Truman Capote meets Katharine Hepburn, because it sounds just like Katharine Hepburn to me, which I'd never put together or thought of while watching the film. But once I read it, I was like, oh, yep, that's right.
Like you could see Hannibal Lecter in like a Howard Hawks screwball comedy opposite Cary Grant.
Yeah,
like
pretty much
arguing over what to do with like a jaguar or a newspaper.
A leopard.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. And then he also like put in touch, or he saw him a bit like Hal from 2001.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
which makes sense too. Yeah. But I it's like I think it's one of those things that like I wouldn't have thought about those, but like as soon as you read them, it's like you just kind of can't unhear or unsee those things. I think that's kind of a funny fact.
Because it's like an iconic performance too.
Yeah.
So Hannibal's breakout scene, I don't know if I had much to say about this. Like I thought it was really, well done and suspenseful and gross, because he has like cuts someone's face off and wears it on his and stuff, and kind of is a big shock factor to it. But there's this really funny touch that like one of the shots is it's like right before he breaks out. I think when he gets up to like walk over to the bars so they can like handcuff him. Mm-hmm. The very bottom of the shot is like there's a magazine called like Bon Appetit.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's like right in frame. I just thought that was just a really funny like little touch.
I wonder if he requested that magazine specifically.
Yeah, and doesn't he? Well, he like bites someone in the scene too, right? Like when
bites their nose.
Yeah, he bites their nose.
But no, he like bites their cheek or whatever. Like the first cop.
Yeah.
He handcuffs one of them, and then he like bites the side of the guy's mouth off. Like
yeah.
So like it's like the Joker in The Dark Knight, but on one side.
Yeah.
And instead of like a cut, it's just like a huge gash in his teeth. Like. It's just like it was truly like the idea of someone biting another human being's face, like, or their tongue and stuff, like, which is what Hannibal seems to do in this iteration of Hannibal in Silence of the Lambs. It's always biting people's tongues and faces and stuff.
Yeah, it's something you just can't understand. It just seems nuts.
Just messed up, man. I don't know. It like something about that is truly disturbing.
Yeah, I don't understand how Mike Tyson just bit that one guy's ear. I can't understand.
Yeah, biting. I like my worst nightmare is the idea of like I would bite somebody and then I could taste them in my mouth, like their blood, and then I'm like, oh, like just the idea of that grosses me out.
I think like my very last instinct above like all the other things, if I want to attack somebody or like attack someone who's or like defend myself against someone who's attacking me, like the very very last thing I would ever do like would be bite them. Like I would crawl up into a ball and give up before I would like think, oh, I should bite them.
Before it occurred to you to
I mean, I guess if they like put their hand like right in my mouth for some reason, or still trying to attack me, I might just like instinctively bite down, I guess. But it'd have to be like a big neon sign in front of me saying like you should probably bite this person right now.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Hannibal Lecter's not a large man, so it makes sense that like if my face was being bit, I would probably like all my other motor functions would probably shut down, and I'd go into panic mode. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe it's like just the most effective way to shut someone down, being like a 50-year-old 5'8" man that he is. But it's super disturbing, and I did notice the Bon Appetit magazine, and I also wanted to talk about how cool it was. And it's kind of been done to death now through like things like True Detective and the Hannibal TV show and things, but the like the cop that he kills there, and he disembowels him basically, or like cuts his stomach open and like hangs him up like an angel, where like the lights like shining through.
Did he adjust the lights too? Or?
He took
That's incredible.
He even like cut a wire so one would flicker the right way. But no, just like that imagery, like the idea of like dead bodies posed in like angelic ways and stuff like that. That's something that the Hannibal TV show does as well, but I always find that kind of stuff particularly effective. And
I guess that ties into like maybe like serial killers' thoughts of like leaving the calling card because they want their work to be seen. It's almost like art in a sense, and maybe this is like a really on the nose like depiction of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also it's like it's a good way for him to draw the attention away from his escape, right? So,
dear Lord, what has he done? And then
yeah. Like, what has he done? Oh yeah, that guy over there has a fucked up face. Go ahead and get him to ambulance. My God, have you seen this guy hanging here? Yeah. Like, don't even look at that guy on the ground. He's still alive. He's got some facial cuts, but it's nothing like being propped like an angel.
Yeah, it's like sleight of hand, like the magician. You get him looking one way.
It's very gothic the way he hangs him up there. Like, it's almost beautiful if it wasn't a dead body with its like stomach sliced open, like, and to think, and then when you're like, oh, that's beautiful, and then it's something revolting about thinking that, oh, well, that was beautiful, like.
Yeah. That, and we also just saw this man like alive as a normal person not too long ago.
Right.
So like it wasn't like he was some special character that was put in the script. Well, I mean, he was a character to be put in the script to be killed, but like he's not portrayed that way, right? He's portrayed as like a normal guard with like normal emotions and like angers towards a serial killer and fears and stuff like that. So it's not like he is like some nameless girl that is dead before the series begins, whose body we're seeing. Like when the detectives are discovering it, right? Like we saw this guy in a couple scenes, and and when we first saw this guy, we weren't thinking to ourselves, "Oh yeah, he's gonna be like dead in a really fucked up way by the end of this movie." So it's just disturbing, right? Like the idea that we know he's not supposed to be propped that way, and he would not have wanted to been propped that way through no fault that he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time,
Right.
Anyway, I thought that scene was just, and does it ever hold up? Like, it is just masterfully done. Masterfully done. Like, completely suspenseful. The elevator, switcheroo, everything. It's just executed perfectly.
Yeah, definitely.
it's like the Ocean's 11 part, right, where like you discover like what he's done, but everything you've seen up to that point has been wrong, and when he pulls that face off,
right,
you know, like
the big
face
reveal
off. Face off. When he pulls the face off, it's not. It's just fucked up. I hate it, but I like it.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So we can move on from there. I think the next big scene, and maybe I'm missing something in between, but next thing I had written down was the Goodbye Horses scene.
Mm-hmm. That's the name of the song that plays.
Which that's the song Goodbye Horses by some band. I can't remember the name.
Psych.
Psych. Thank you. Yeah, it's a scene where Buffalo Bill's dancing, and he sets up a video camera and films himself dancing, and it's like the famous tucking scene where he tucks his genitals back to give him the appearance of being a woman. And I guess the thing that I want to talk about with the scene is this scene has kind of been parodied over and over again. Like in general, this movie is like a huge part of pop culture to the point where it's been parodied many times. Like they did it parodied in Clerks 2 comes to mind, few other places.
Like you've seen the parody even if you haven't seen the movie.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and then also like the Hannibal Lecter stuff is like parodied in like Austin Powers and other things. And like I think it speaks to the effectiveness of the movie that those parodies don't diminish the film when you watch it again.
Right.
And that goes for this scene to me. There's other films that like they get parodied, and you go back and you watch the scene that's been parodied a bunch, and it's hard to take it seriously. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like it's been parodied to death, where like the film no longer has an effect. And mm-hmm. This film is so good that it like circumvents all of that. Like no matter how much they parody that scene or any scene from this or the Hannibal Lecter thing in general, you know, it just works. And like the scene is not funny, really. Like it's very interesting and disturbing and creepy.
This may actually be the one part of the movie. While this scene is really creepy, I think that it's a good. The one part of the movie that hasn't aged well is probably the trope that he's transgendered, so you must be crazy is kind of what I got from it. Well,
they kind of address that in the movie. Like Jodie Foster's character, I'm not saying it's an excuse, right? Because I kind of agree with you, but in the movie's defense, Jodie Foster does say that like that doesn't make sense because transgendered people aren't like statistically like passive and very like not dangerous at all.
Yeah.
She even makes it a point to bring that up in the movie, saying like this is very unlikely.
Right.
Yeah. Which I think gets rid of that problem for the most part, as they kind of explain that away.
I would agree with you if the movie came out today, but like back in the early days of like every time a transgender person was in movies, I feel like they probably were a killer or like a
So
if there's
like,
a transgender person, then they're crazy, you know.
Yeah, it'd be different if there was like two other transgender characters in movies that year that were really prominent that weren't crazy.
Yeah, so actually an interesting that goes along with this topic, supposedly Morgan Freeman was up for this role of Hannibal as well. But because he was black, they didn't cast him because they couldn't cast villains. They didn't want a black villain so I remember reading an article about that. So
that's interesting.
But so it's the same thing. A transgender person can be a villain, you know. But I think there's a lot of tropes here that like, and maybe not enough understanding on the general public side of it, you know. And even to this day, there may not be. But like, that was just the part that I felt uncomfortable with.
I think the problem with that comes from the general public, not so much the movie. Like, I think having her say that like transgender people generally are like passive and not, this doesn't fit. Like, I think that's the movie's attempt to distance itself from that idea, but you don't have everyone in the world who's going to catch on to that. And I think I do agree that like, the general attitude towards like transgenders, I mean, we're seeing it a lot right now with the whole like transgender bathroom issue. Like the argument from people who don't want a transgender person, like a man going into a woman's bathroom, is because they think they're a weird pervert, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that this movie doesn't help that. I agree.
And to be honest, I missed that line where she said she explained it. So that may be why I reacted the way I did, because I didn't hear that.
Well, I don't think you're off base on reacting that way,
Yeah.
because this movie had a similar reaction whenever it came out, right? Like the transgendered community let them know that they were being irresponsible here.
It's kind of like Black Panther, for instance.
Yeah.
You know, for so long, you only see yourself in a certain way on the big screen. And transgender people are very rarely even in movies. And then when you do see them, they're crazy, serial killer. You know, like, so of course you're going to be upset because, yeah, I'm tired of seeing myself on screen as a crazy serial killer. You know, does that make sense?
Or like the butt of a joke.
Yeah,
or something
exactly.
weird. Yeah.
And
Something that's like abnormal, right?
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the backlash at the time. Like, it did get the backlash from transgender and even from like gay people, of the idea that like gay people are like this silly people who have like fluffy dogs, right?
Right. Oh yeah,
And it was like the dog touch too was like annoying to them because it seemed very like stereotypical, and so they did like see it as insensitive, and I think rightfully so. Like, I think the film tries to explain it away, but like I think the important thing is that how does society take it, and what effect does it have? And I don't think that they accomplished steering the effect on society away. Like, I think the effect on society is still like transgender people are like mentally disturbed weirdos, basically.
Yeah, I would say that. I would say that this movie, even though it does try to balance it off with that line, has done more lasting damage to that community in the eyes of the general public than good.
So
Yeah.
I have a question down this rabbit hole. I mean, it did so much good. Like, the woman power or the feminist aspect of this is so great in this movie, I think. And then they kind of mess up with this. But do you think anybody goes and sees this movie and walks away thinking, yeah, the feminism in this movie is really great? Or do they walk away like, that Hannibal character, he ate that guy's face off? You know, like, what do you think they walk away remembering? Or, you know, like, does that make sense?
Well, sure, but I don't know that
I guess it's not the filmmaker's fault.
Yeah, that's not Jonathan Demme's fault, right? Like, all he can do is make the best movie he could with as progressive of a message as he could. And in 1991, when this was being made, I assume, and then when it was released in 92, it is very progressive in its feminist agenda, right?
Yeah.
But there was no like LGBTQ representation in the early 90s, right?
Right.
So whenever they are in like a mainstream movie like this, I think, let's put it this way, if this were written in like 2016, I think that would have been a change to the movie. I think they would have made Buffalo Bill not a transgender character. I think they would have just made him a straight man with different mental issues.
Yeah, I think you're right. Or that backlash would be much stronger.
It would be much stronger.
Yeah.
Like, there's backlash on Black Panther right now because they didn't put in a gay relationship, even though they didn't advertise that there was going to be a gay relationship to the public. But still, journalists are mad because it's not progressive enough, fast enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess one more touch to the character, like, they don't really make a big deal out of this, but throughout his apartment towards the end, there's like several swastikas. Like, his bedspread was like a swastika bedspread, and there was something on the wall.
It was like a homemade quilt bedspread too.
Yeah.
Like his grandma made it for him or something.
So we just have this, like, I guess, like, potentially gay transgender Nazi. So I think they're kind of like just
all over the place.
Do you think they just threw like, what? How can we hate this guy more? We'll put a swastika in there, you know, like.
Yeah. Like in the '90s, they were like, "What's weird? Like, what's weird things that people don't know about?" You know.
Yeah.
And
so I just think
age
that
well.
swastikas maybe are too much.
Right.
Too much,
well,
but
like,
they don't. There's maybe one shot where it's kind of it's like in focus and maybe the focus of the shot, but the other one, like the bedspread thing, is like super. it's not the focus of the shot. Like it's
right. It's like whenever
subtle.
she has it's when she has the girl traps the dog in the well, and he's like freaking out, and he's like running around his house like looking for like a gun or something.
Yeah.
And then he like flips over the bedspread, and then you see like the swastikas on there. I feel like if this were made today, they would drop the transgender route and probably just go with the swastikas.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot easier to hate Nazis.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
what did you guys think of that final sequence where it's the parallel shots, and you think you're watching one thing, but you're watching another thing? Is it too much now because we've seen that happen before?
No, it's great. It's
Yeah.
the
It works
perfect
really
example of how to do it well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It gets me. I was like, wait a second. Maybe like I try to figure out what did I miss. I thought that. And anyways, it gets me every time.
I knew it was coming
Yeah.
even, and I was looking at the exterior of the house.
Yeah.
That she was approaching, and I was like, God, they're doing this bait and switch perfectly.
Yeah.
Like, you know so little about the exterior of where he's at that it could be anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, they could show us like a shack in the woods, and we'd be like, well, I mean, that might be the outside of his house. I don't know.
And then the night vision goggles.
That part's so creepy.
Yeah, that was really, really good. And you just see her just panicking, and she's like reaching out.
He touches her hair.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. It's everything about that. Like from the moment that we start that cross cutting and then getting her into the house is like pitch perfect. Like climax, like Act 3.
Yeah, really, really good.
Showdown between her and Buffalo Bill. It's all pretty incredible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And real quick, before we get too far off the subject of Buffalo Bill, we've talked a lot about the problematic nature of the character in general, but I did want to throw out to Ted Levine, who plays Buffalo Bill. What a fantastic performance.
Yeah.
Right? Like, memorable. Like, we all remember this guy, don't we? Like, no? I mean, when you think of Silence of the Lambs, if you're not thinking of someone's face being removed, you're probably thinking of that dance.
Yeah, it's either...
You're probably thinking of him getting ready and like, I'd fuck me. With this like creepy, manly voice.
Yeah.
It's either Hannibal or this guy that you think
Yeah,
about.
it's so manly, and it's so deep, and it's so like, and he's like balding, and he's just so like, he's not afraid to look like disgusting.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, even for, I don't know. It's fantastic. And, and like this, I don't know. Just like it's just brave. The performance, like when he's doing the actual dance, like it's a joke now, but what a brave thing, like.
And real quick, I was actually reading that, the story is based on a book, but they had actually cut that dance scene going from book to screenplay. Like it wasn't in the screenplay. But Ted Levine is the one who like actually insisted they put that dance scene back in there because he thought it was super important for like the character. So like that was his call. No one asked him to do it, and he had to like brave through it. Like he was like,
that's awesome.
He was like, yeah, that needs to be in there. I want to do that. So even more props to him, I think.
It does reveal a lot about the character and like what the character thinks of himself and how he wants other people to see him.
Yeah, absolutely. And in 1991, can you imagine like what that would have done to audiences? Like before, pre-internet,
Yeah, this movie made people
flip
their minds.
This kind of thing being in the news all the time.
This is Basic Instinct level of craziness.
Yeah, watching that was just the equivalent of watching Sharon Stone cross her legs or uncross them.
Yeah, cool. Well, so we can move on. I guess this last thing I want to talk about was the ending and like the final call with Hannibal, which I think is I'm just glad we got that like final scene with them, like rather than him just going off and we never see him again and they never have like one more scene together. I really like that. And is there anything you guys want to touch on with like that call?
Yeah, sorry. It does a good job of actually making you forget Hannibal's a player in this game. In my opinion, like I kind of forgot he was even on like the board as a chess piece anymore, right? Like I was wrapping the movie up in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah. There's like a whole like side plot that's like the most interesting part of the movie that I've been so engrossed in like the execution of like the serial killer plot that I had forgotten the heart and soul of the movie. And Yeah, it's great. Like, I'm having an old friend for dinner, and it's the warden. Yeah.
That line's great. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great, and like the perfect ending shot. And I love how it goes on so long, and you just see like the credits start to roll over it while everything keeps going in the frame.
Yeah, I watched the whole thing as the credits went up. I was
Yeah.
just like, is there going to be more?
Yeah. Well, it's also too. It made me think of the ending of Bicycle Thieves. That movie ends with. Can I spoil bikes? I think I can spoil Bicycle Thieves, right?
Yeah, it's a couple years old.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So the ending of that movie is like the father who's been trying to get back his bicycle. He tries to steal another bicycle, gets caught. His kid sees it all. So he just feels like this shame. And he's basically become one of the criminals who he's like, disgusted with and doesn't like the entire movie because they stole his bicycle. And he just becomes another one of them. And he like starts walking into the crowd, and the shot holds long enough to where like you can no longer distinguish him from everyone else, and he just kind of becomes one of the crowd. And they do that with this film. Hannibal walks into the crowd, and eventually he's just another person in there. And it's kind of this like there's this crazy guy out there, and he could be anybody. You can no longer tell who he is or where he is. I think it's a different, I think, like intention than the Bicycle Thieves ending, but still just as effective.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fantastic closing shot because it stays on there the whole time, and I don't know at what point you lose Anthony Hopkins, but I remember very distinctly trying to keep my eye on him.
Yeah, the credits go on for a while, and he's not in there
and then eventually you
it.
just lose him.
Yeah.
You just lose him in the mess of it all, and it's just great. It's genius.
Yeah, awesome. So any final thoughts on Silence of the Lambs? I think I've said everything that I have to say.
It's a great movie.
No, I think we've said a lot. I think it holds up. I think it's fantastic, and aside from maybe a little problematic social commentary, it holds up tremendously.
Yeah, great performances. I think every Academy Award super deserved. Maybe even I don't know what it was up against for the ones that didn't win, but maybe it deserved those too. At least like editing, because it's really like just so well paced and edited. So I guess we'll move on. Final question here for everyone: what is your favorite serial killer film, or I guess TV show? We cover TV sometimes, so if you want to do TV show, go for it. And I don't know who wants to go first. Okay, Chris, go first.
I'll go. Okay, Chris, go first.
Okay, so I picked one that you guys might be angry at me for, but I have to say my favorite serial killer is actually from the TV show Hannibal.
God damn it, Chris. I'm so mad at you.
Are you picking the character of Hannibal or the TV show Hannibal?
The character of Hannibal.
Okay.
In that TV show, I didn't want to pick Silence of the Lambs, but in that TV show, Mads Mikkelsen plays Hannibal, and he is great as Hannibal. It's a different kind of Hannibal. It's before he gets put in prison. And it's just him fucking with other people's heads the whole time, and then eating them.
I've seen the first 3 episodes of the series, and so I obviously cannot speak to how his character is portrayed for the whole of the series. But I was disappointed in the way that Hannibal was portrayed in the TV show, because I was wanting the Silence of the Lambs Hannibal, the evil Hannibal. But the one in the show, he might be evil, but he also seems like he's got a decent streak in him. And I don't know if I want that.
I would say keep watching.
All right.
It's really good, and you may never get Hannibal Lecter, Anthony Hopkins level, because they never go into that. But you will know that he is evil because he's just fucking with people's brains. It's just really good. And Mads Mikkelsen is just a really great actor, and
oh, that's true.
The subtlety with which Mads Mikkelsen and Hugh Dancy, who plays the original, do you remember the name from the Red Dragon?
No, I've never seen that.
Oh, the guy that Edward Norton played in the movie?
Yeah. Anyways, the original kind of Clarice, they are so subtle, and it just works so well. He's just my favorite. Anyways, what's yours, Mike?
Actually, real quick, that character's name is Will Graham.
Oh, Will Graham. Yeah. He's in the books. And
yeah. Now ask me.
What did you think, Mike?
What is your favorite serial?
Yeah, what is my favorite?
I thought it was
is serial killer movies or TV shows?
Serial killer movies or TV show. Okay.
Okay. All right. So I actually have 2, and they're both very similar. And I know we're supposed to pick one, but I'm picking 2 as a tie. And that is David Fincher's Zodiac from 2007 with Mark Ruffalo, Robert Downey Jr., and Jake Gyllenhaal. I think that movie is fantastic. One of the best unsolved mystery murder stories there is. And then there's another one from South Korea from 2003 from Bong Joon-ho, the director of The Host and Snowpiercer. Mm-hmm. And I think he did another movie recently. Okja from Netflix. He directed a movie called Memories of Murder about one of South Korea's unsolved serial killers mysteries. And man, is it fantastic. There's not a very good English release of it, but if you guys ever get the chance to watch Memories of Murder, I suggest doing it. It's got the South Korean actor, hang on one second. He's like in everything. The actor's name, who's in like every South Korean drama ever, it seems like, is, Kang Ho Song, or Song Kang Ho.
Yeah, I've seen Memories of Murder. I think I actually watched it with you, or you showed it to me after you had seen it for the first time.
I think I told you to watch it. Yeah. And that was back in Nacogdoches whenever I was going through a kick of legally obtaining a lot of South Korean movies. Legally.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I remember that phase, because actually I made predictions to Chris that you would pick either I Saw the Devil or Memories of Murder your.
It wasn't I Saw the Devil.
It wasn't.
Yeah, once you said two, and we thought you were going to pick both of them.
I was
real excited.
Yeah, I thought
a double feature. No,
but Memories of Murder is great, and I think Zodiac is really great. Zodiac was actually it was on my short list.
They're very similar movies. Yeah. Totally different than I Saw the Devil, but since you mentioned it, I'm going to keep this part in and say you guys should all see I Saw the Devil if you like revenge South Korean dramas.
Yes.
Or thrillers, whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely.
All right, well, Justin, what is your favorite serial killer movie and or TV show?
I think I'm going to go with kind of a weird one here. I don't know this is exactly my favorite, but I really, really love it. And there's probably better movies, but Death Proof. The Quentin Tarantino movie. Like I Silence of the Lambs is great. It's probably like the best one. You guys have named some really, really great ones. So I'm just gonna change it up a little bit and go Death Proof because I really love the movie. It's one of my favorite Tarantino movies.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it's about a serial killer, Kurt Russell, who is like
Mike.
He plays Stuntman Mike, and he crashes into women and kills them through car wrecks. But his car is death proof because it's a stunt car. And I just think it's really, really fun, and one of my favorite Kurt Russell performances. It's really funny, and
Kurt Russell's great in that movie.
Yeah, and it's got one of the best car chases I've ever seen in a film. Like even the old car chase movies, you know, like, and I think it's like 30 minutes long. It's like a 30-minute car chase, and yeah, it's just great. I think people think of it as a much lesser Tarantino work. I think Tarantino even thinks it's a lesser work of his, but I disagree. I enjoy it more than some of his other more popular things. Like I would rather watch Death Proof again before I watch Reservoir Dogs.
Cool. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know that I'm there, but I really enjoyed Death Proof, and I would not even consider it less than exceptional, in my opinion, but I know a lot of people do.
Yeah.
It actually will be interesting the next time I watch that movie after hearing about the recent things that have come to light about the Kill Bill set and Uma Thurman's car crash.
Yeah.
I wonder how much that Death Proof was inspired based on that incident.
Yeah, that's almost a whole nother, like, that's a whole news segment.
Yeah.
Sure.
Anyway, it's fascinating stuff. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, you guys should Google what happened with Uma Thurman on the set of the Kill Bill movies. She had a car crash, and I have a feeling it had a heavy inspiration on what later became Death Proof.
Yeah. And I will say for the record, too, I would recommend watching the Death Proof version that's in, like, the Grindhouse double feature.
Watch Grindhouse first if you can.
Yeah, it's shorter, for one, and like the added stuff that's in like the singular like standalone release of Death Proof is not really worth it.
Can you still find? Do they still produce the Grindhouse movies together?
They didn't produce it for forever. Like it was
almost
like
they have the Grindhouse version on Blu-ray right now.
And is it both
I'm actually
movies?
not sure they produce the standalone versions anymore.
Yeah, I don't think they.
Oh, really?
They originally just released standalone versions. It took like 7-8 years before the actual Grindhouse double feature as it was in theaters came out like on Blu-ray or DVD at all. And yeah, that's the version to watch in my opinion. Even if you just skip Planet of Terror, like, and just want to watch Death Proof, like that shorter version of Death Proof is better.
The movie theater going, and we can cut this out. But the movie theater going experience for those two movies was something that was really special, I think.
Yeah.
Like, we don't get that very often, and like with the shorts in between movies, it was just I would love to have something like that happen again because it's so much fun.
Yeah, it was a really unique experience that unfortunately was not financially successful, so we'll likely never get anything like that in our lifetimes again.
Yeah, they could have released two movies.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was cool. Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino, it may not have succeeded everywhere they wanted it to, both financially or otherwise, but it was definitely something unique.
One more thing that I forgot to talk about that you guys can either cut or add in later. So the first time you guys watched Silence of the Lambs, and she walks back down the hallway, and that one guy that killed himself later on, what did you? I had no idea what that was until the second time that I watched it, or like it just like I was so surprised because I didn't remember it at all. Like the sperm gets gets splashed on her face. The one guy throws it at her. Did you guys know that the first time you saw it, or like I didn't remember it all?
No, I don't think I did because I think I saw it like I don't know when I was in like 6th grade.
Yeah. I saw it at like 19, so I was aware.
I don't know how I didn't remember.
I caught on immediately this time, and I was like, "Oh, gross."
Yeah, I was like,
fucking gross.
Oh my god, I can't believe this.
Yeah, the first time I saw it, I was a little kid, so I was just like, "What you upset about?"
Right.
Okay, so I think that is it for today's show. So thank you, the listener, for listening, and thanks
for doing what you do and listening.
Hey, keep on keeping on.
I'm gonna thank people for listening. I think it's
so am I.
Keep on
chucking. I feel like you're making fun of me.
We're not. Well, yeah, we are.
Yeah. Okay.
Not the listener.
Yeah. All right, and thanks as always to Jake Wagner Russell for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, it can be found at soundcloud.com/bobscotch. And if you want to keep up with the podcast, let us know what you think about Silence of the Lambs. Take part in our Oscar pick bet thing. It's called Oscar bet. Or if you want to follow along with the podcast, tell us what you think about Silence of the Lambs, take part in our Oscar bet, send us your picks. You can do so on Facebook at facebook.com/casualcinemedia. If you want to join our group, talk movies with us, put your Oscar predictions in there, you can do so at facebook.com/groups/casualcinemedia. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at casualcinemedia, or you can email us directly at casuallycriterion@gmail.com. And as always, don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes. The 5-star reviews that you give us on there are super helpful in getting us more listeners and growing the show and having more listener interaction, which I think is really great. We had a few questions on past episodes recently, and that was really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Next week's episode is going to be Casually Current. It'll be Lady Bird. And also look for our bonus episode of The Post.
Yeah, send in your questions, topics that you want us to cover about each movie. If you want us to talk about something specifically, answer a question, whatever.
All right. Well, until next week, goodbye.
Bye.
See ya.